My power is a disease. Every swing of my iron axe into the trunk of this ancient oak is an effort to kill the beast scratching at the inside of my ribs. The heavy blade bites deep into the wood. Thwack. Splinters fly, sharp and smelling of damp earth and fresh pine, stinging my face. I wipe the sweat from my eyes with the back of my rugged hand, feeling the jagged skin of the thick scar over my left eyebrow. It is a permanent physical mark of the day I lost control and slaughtered my own kin. Because of that tragic day, I built this psychological prison in the deepest part of the primeval woods. I am Kaelen, the exiled Alpha King, and I must remain completely alone to ensure my lethal magic never harms another living soul. The forest around me feels heavy and quiet today. The air is cold, thick, and completely suffocating because I am using my sheer willpower to suppress the natural magic of these woods. I look down into a small frozen pond nearby to check my reflection. My silver eyes look flat and completely empty. My long, dark hair is tied back tightly to match the tight, iron grip I keep on my own dark emotions. I am a massive, brooding man wrapped in heavy furs, and my thick black beard is frosted with ice from my own heavy breaths. Why do I stay here? Deep down, she knew the truth. Or rather, I know it. I stay because connection always equals casualty for a monster like me. Can a man with blood on his hands ever deserve to protect anything again? That is the dark question that haunts my mind with every single beat of my heart. Still, the physical work is the only thing that keeps the growl in my throat from escaping into the open air. I raise the heavy axe once more, my muscles burning under my thick clothes. The wood is tough, like iron, resisting my efforts. Yet, I welcome the pain. I need the exhaustion to silence the wild, commanding presence inside my chest. If I stop moving, the memories of the old pack and the red pools of blood will return to choke me. I must push my body until it breaks. Without warning, the wind changes direction completely. I stop mid-swing, the heavy axe hovering frozen in the gray air. The forest holds its breath as a completely new scent hits my nose. It is not pine, and it is not the smell of winter rain. It is human blood, fresh, hot, and laced with the sharp flavor of pure, unadulterated terror. Not only that, but a second scent follows right behind it. It is the foul, rotten stench of dark magic and savage predators. The Bloodmoon pack is hunting close by. As the wind shifted, the beast inside my chest woke up with a ferocious roar, throwing my quiet world into total chaos. Chapter 2. The scent of the human woman is getting stronger, pulling at something deep and ancient inside my bones. I run through the thick trees, my boots sinking into the wet mud. I do not use my wolf form because I am terrified of what will happen if I let the animal take total control. Instead, I move as a man, a shadow darting through the ancient trunks. Soon after, I reach the very edge of my warded territory and press my large body against the rough bark of a massive pine tree. I look through the gray fog. Just beyond the tree line, a human woman is running for her life. Her clothes are torn, her shoulder is bleeding from a deep gash, and her breathing is a ragged, desperate gasp. Behind her, 3 massive black wolves are moving through the bushes like smoke. They are the vanguard scouts of the Bloodmoon pack, led by the usurper Silas. They are not hunting for food. They are playing with her, enjoying her terror before the final kill. My silver eyes flare with a bright, sudden light. My thick black beard bristles as the primal alpha inside my chest demands that I leap across the border to rip those beasts apart. Even so, I force my body to stay perfectly still behind the tree. I have sworn a solemn oath of nonviolence. I am a monster who kills packs, not a hero who saves people. If I step out, my power could destroy the whole forest. I must maintain my absolute neutrality, even if it means watching an innocent person die right before my eyes. She is running straight toward my hiding spot, her boots tripping over the thick roots. Her hyper-vigilant eyes are wide with panic, searching for any escape from the supernatural jaws snapping at her heels. No matter how hard she tried, she could not outrun the supernatural speed of the beasts behind her. To make things worse, a giant black wolf leaps forward, its yellow teeth grazing her jacket. She screams, a sound of pure agony that slices right through my disciplined mind. The moral contradiction in my soul is tearing me apart. Am I a protector, or am I just a coward hiding in the dark? Before she could move, her foot catches on a buried stone and she falls hard into the frozen dirt. She rolls over, gasping, and looks directly into the dark shadows of the bush where I am standing. The moment their eyes locked, time stood still completely. Her eyes are a deep, beautiful color, reflecting the gray sky and the shadow of death. She does not see a king. She sees a giant, wild stranger. Something inside her shifted, a final spark of stubborn will to live shining through her terror. At the same exact time, the forest earth beneath my heavy leather boots begins to crack. Chapter 3. As my control snaps into a million from the tree line like a thunderstorm, completely abandoning my vow of isolation. The 3 black wolves do not even have time to turn around before I am upon them. Without thinking, I grab the first wolf by its thick neck, my large hand squeezing until the bones snap with a loud crack. The second beast lunges at my chest, its sharp claws tearing through my heavy fur coat. Instead of backing away, I lean into the pain and deliver a massive bone-crushing blow to its skull with my bare fist. The wolf drops instantly into the wet mud, its red blood staining the white frost. The last predator backs away, its yellow eyes wide with sudden fear as it recognizes the ancient commanding aura rolling off my body. I take one step forward, and a low, rumbling growl rises from the very depth of my chest, vibrating the air. The remaining wolf turns around and darts back into the deep fog, its tail tucked between its legs. The immediate danger is gone, but my heart is pounding like a war drum. I turn around slowly to look at the woman on the ground. She is shivering violently, her pale face covered in dirt and red streaks from her wounded shoulder. She tries to push herself backward away from me, her hands scraping against the freezing mud. She looks at my glowing silver eyes and my blood-soaked hands with deep horror. Moments later, her strength completely fails her. Her body collapses forward and she slides down into the wet leaves. I move on instinct, catching her small, fragile frame before she can hit the hard ground. The moment her warm blood touches the bare skin of my wrists, a sudden shockwave of golden energy rushes up my arms. The fated mate bond snaps into place with a concussive force that takes my breath away. Her soul answers mine in the silence, her scent of wild rain and sweet honey filling my senses. It is a beautiful, terrifying realization. I haven't just broken my vow, I have chained my immortal, monstrous soul to a fragile human trespasser. She opens her eyes for one last second, her voice trembling as she grabs the thick fabric of my sleeve. "Don't let them find me," she whispered, unaware the stranger protecting her was the Alpha King. Her head drops against my chest, her body going completely limp in my large arms. As the silence roared around us, a distant chilling howl echoes through the primeval trees. It is Silas, and his voice carries the promise of an all-out war. I scoop Lyra up into my arms, holding her close to my chest, and cross back over the threshold into my dark domain as the sky darkens. Chapter 4. I lay Lyra down on the thick layer of black bear furs covering my heavy oak bed, my hands trembling as I pull away from her warm skin. The touch of my fated mate sends a terrifying jolt of lightning straight to my ribs, making the beast inside me claw frantically to get out. To make things worse, the magic of the forest is already breaking past my control. I look at the rough log walls of my hut and catch my breath. Small green vines are rapidly bursting from the wood, blooming into bright bioluminescent flowers that cast a soft golden glow across her pale face. The territory is physically reacting to her presence because my soul has accepted her as its queen, completely erasing centuries of my forced suppression. No, 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 I mutter under my breath, my voice sounding like grinding stones as I grab a jar of ancient healing salve from my shelf. I rub the cool green paste onto the jagged tear on her shoulder, watching her flinch even in her deep sleep. My main goal right now is simple. I need to heal her wounds, wipe her memory using a mind fog spell, and banish her back to the human world before she ever wakes up. If she stays here, Silas will track her down, and my violent past will swallow her alive. I am a plague, a terminal disease to anyone who gets close to me, and I cannot let her become another casualty of my monstrous power. Suddenly, her long eyelashes flutter open, her deep eyes glassy with fever as the golden light of the flowers reflects in them. She doesn't scream when she looks at my massive, scarred face, nor does she shrink away from the dried wolf blood staining my black beard. Instead, her small, soft hand reaches out from the furs, her fingers moving slowly through the air until they gently press against the thick scar over my left eyebrow. A sharp gasp catches in the back of my throat. The space between them burned with a sudden suffocating heat as her thumb brushes my skin, sending a wave of absolute peace through my chaotic mind. "You're the man from the trees," she whispers, her voice cracking from dehydration. "Drink this," I rumble, pulling away roughly because her proximity is destroying my resolve. I press a wooden cup of water to her lips, keeping my silver eyes cold and flat. "You are in the Heartwood Sanctuary. Tomorrow, when your strength returns, you will leave this forest and never look back." Chapter 5. I aggressively back away into the furthest, darkest corner of the cabin, crossing my massive arms over my chest to create an invisible wall between us. I glare at her through the shadows, letting my heavy silence fill the room like a suffocating fog. If I want to keep her safe from the curse of my fated bond, I have to make her fear me. I need her to look at my hulking frame and see a dangerous, unpredictable monster so she will run back to her boring human town the moment she can stand on her own 2 feet. It tears my heart into bloody pieces to reject her like this, but deep down, I know it is the ultimate form of protection. "Who were those things?" Lyra asks, sitting up slowly against the furs, her hyper-vigilant eyes narrowing as she studies my tense posture. "Those weren't normal wolves. They had eyes like a man. And you killed them with your bare hands." "They are none of your concern, human," I growl, intentionally letting the deep bass of my voice rattle the rafters of the hut. This forest is a graveyard for people who ask too many questions. Sleep. Your presence here is an annoyance I do not intend to tolerate for long. "I'm not afraid of your growling, giant," she says, her quiet resilience shining through her exhaustion as she sets the cup down. "I've spent my whole life surviving things that tried to break me. You saved my life out there, and I don't think a real monster would have bothered to heal my shoulder." What followed was a long, agonizing silence that stretched between us like a tightening rope. Her stubborn refusal to be intimidated completely undermines my defense mechanisms, making my inner alpha want to roar with pride. I want to pull her into my arms and claim her before the whole world, yet I force myself to remain frozen in the dark. But then, the temperature inside the cabin drops instantly, turning our breath into white clouds of ice. A foul, sulfurous stench of dark magic cuts through the scent of the blooming flowers, making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Outside the heavy timber walls, the thick primeval mist curdles into an impenetrable black wall. Silas's pack has completely surrounded the cabin, their heavy paws thumping against the frozen earth as they close the trap. Chapter 6. I lunge across the cabin floor, my heavy leather boots slamming against the wood as I reach the massive oak door. I throw the heavy iron bolt into place, locking it tight before grabbing a hunting dagger from my belt. Without thinking, I slice the palm of my own hand, letting my royal alpha blood drip onto the floorboards. I use my fingers to smear the red liquid across the wood, quickly carving ancient glowing blood runes to seal the protective wards of the sanctuary. The cabin shakes violently as a massive surge of kinetic magic erupts from the runes, locking the doors and windows with an invisible iron grip. "What are you doing?" Lyra cries out, her thoughts spinning as she watches the blood runes glow with a fierce crimson light. "They are at the perimeter," I reply, my silver eyes flaring with cold fury as I turn around to face her, the red glow casting demonic shadows across my face. "Silas has brought the entire vanguard. The dark magic they are using has corrupted the outer tree line, which means the mist won't hold them back for long. You are trapped here, human. You cannot leave this cabin, and I cannot carry you out without exposing us to a slaughter. Then we fight them together, she says, her body moving on instinct as she slips out of the bed, her bare feet hitting the cold floor as she searches for a weapon. No, I roar, stepping forward until my massive shadow completely swallows her small frame. You do not know what you are dealing with. You are safe from them behind these walls, but you are no longer safe from me. By sealing these doors, I have officially declared war on the Bloodmoon pack, and I will tear this forest apart before I let them touch you. In that moment, her eyes lock onto mine, her breath catching as she feels the raw, commanding power vibrating through my muscles. The electric tension between us snaps like a broken wire, burning the very air we breathe. She doesn't pull away from my terrifying anger. Instead, she takes a step closer, her soul answering my silent plea for safety. Outside, a chorus of savage supernatural howls rips through the night sky, their claws beginning to scratch against the reinforced oak of the door. The siege of the Heartwood Sanctuary has officially begun, locking us together in a fated battle that will either save our souls or burn our world to ash. Chapter 7. Days have bled into one another, and the heavy oak door remains bolted tight against the terrors of the night. Forced to live together in this small space, I try my best to keep away from Lyra, but my silver eyes follow her every single time she moves across the room. I keep my distance because the fierce fated bond is constantly pulling at my chest, making my heart ache with a hunger I am not allowed to feed. To make things worse, she is not a fragile human who sits around and cries all day. Rather, she is a stubborn survivor who adapts to my cold silence by helping clean the cabin and chop kindling by the hearth. Every single breath she takes makes the ancient forest hum beneath our feet, proving that the living sanctuary is slowly recognizing her as its rightful queen. You have been staring at that map for 3 hours, Kaelen, Lyra says, her soft voice breaking through the heavy silence like a ray of warm sunshine. I am watching the borders, I rumble, my voice deep and flat as I stare down at the old leather parchment on my heavy table. Silas is keeping his wolves just past the warded tree line, which means he is waiting for us to make a mistake. Why do you not sit down and rest your wounded shoulder? Because sitting still makes my thoughts spin, she replies, walking right up to my table and leaning her small hands against the rough wood. I want to help you protect this place, Kaelen. I am not a liability, and I am not going to let you face those monsters completely alone. What followed was a long, intense look between us that made the space between our bodies burn with unspoken desire. Her quiet resilience is a flame in my dark world, melting the thick ice around my cold heart. In fact, I am deeply tempted to reach out and pull her against my chest, to bury my face in her sweet scent of rain and honey. Even so, I force myself to look back down at the map, balling my large hands into tight fists to keep from touching her. Before either could speak, a sickening, black liquid begins to seep underneath the heavy oak doors, bubbling like boiling oil. The air thickens instantly with the foul stench of rot and dark magic, making the glowing bioluminescent flowers on the wall wither and turn to dust in the span of a breath. Silas is using a corrupted fog to choke the life out of my wards, and the defensive walls of my sanctuary are beginning to crack under the immense pressure. Chapter 8. Come morning, the corrupted fog clears just enough for me to open the heavy door a few inches to inspect the immediate perimeter. I step out onto the frosted earth, my large body tense, and signal for Lyra to follow me closely into the gray mist. My primary goal right now is to teach her how to navigate the magical woods without triggering the deadly briars that protect my cabin. I walk slowly through the towering, ancient pines, showing her how to step only on the pale stone paths, and how to rub the sap of the silver ferns on her skin to mask her human scent from the hunting pack. Keep your head down and stay exactly in my footsteps, I whisper, my eyes scanning the thick shadows of the canopy above us. The forest is alive, Lyra. If you step off the path, the roots will wrap around your ankles and drag you down into the dark earth because they do not know your face yet. I understand, she whispers back, her hyper-vigilant eyes wide with wonder as she copies my movements with perfect precision. It feels like the trees are watching us, like the whole forest is holding its breath for you. It is, I rumble, stopping near a massive moss-covered rock. The heartwood is tethered to my own soul. If I am angry, the briars grow sharp. If I fall, the woods will die with me. That is why you must learn these secrets, so you can survive even if I am no longer here to protect you. Teaching her these ancient rules feels like admitting my own mortality, filling my chest with a sharp, heavy anxiety. Yet watching her move so bravely through the supernatural mist makes my inner alpha swell with intense, protective pride. She stops right next to me, her breathing soft, and our shoulders brush against each other under the weight of the heavy gray sky. The electric tension between us sparks into life once more, and as the silence roared around us, I lean down toward her, drawn by a primal force I cannot resist. Time stood still as our lips almost touch, but then, my past guilt flashes through my mind like a knife, and I violently pull away from her, cursing my own weakness. Chapter 9. Without warning, the branches above our heads snap with a sound like a rifle shot. A massive Bloodmoon scout, its black fur twisted into jagged spikes by dark magic, drops from the thick canopy and lands directly between Lyra and me. The beast snarls, its yellow teeth dripping with a black venomous drool that burns the frozen grass upon contact. It moves with supernatural speed, lunging straight for Lyra's throat with its massive claws extended. Her body moved on instinct as she ducks beneath a low branch, but she trips over a root, falling hard into the cold dirt. I erupt into motion a beat later, my primal rage taking total control of my muscles as I throw my large body between the monster and my fated mate. I grab the leaping beast by its throat midair, slamming its heavy body down into the dirt with enough kinetic force to shake the ground. The wolf bites down hard on my forearm, its sharp teeth tearing through my thick leather coat and drawing hot red blood. Instead of backing away, I lean into the pain and use my bare hands to tear the beast's jaws apart, ending its life with a sickening crack. I stand over the dead monster, my chest heaving, my silver eyes glowing with a terrifying, blinding light as the savage alpha energy rolls off my skin in waves. I am covered in foul black blood, a hulking beast of a man waiting for her to scream in total revulsion at the horrific sight of my true violent nature. Instead of running away in fear, Lyra pulls herself up from the dirt and walks straight into my space, her hands steady. She pulls a clean cloth from her jacket pocket and gently begins to wipe the black gore from my thick beard, her touch incredibly soft. "You did what you had to do to keep me safe," she whispers, her eyes locked onto mine with total trust, completely erasing my self-loathing. "They know we are out here now," I rumble, my voice shaking as I look down at the dead scout. Suddenly, the dead wolf's yellow eyes begin to glow with a pale, magical light, projecting a floating image of Silas into the cold air. The usurper smiles cruelly, his voice echoing through the trees as he sneers at us. "I have found you at last, coward king, and I am coming to burn your little human pet to ash." Chapter 10. The psychological siege begins the moment the magical projection of Silas fades into the freezing air. That night, a chorus of agonizing screams rips through the thick canopy, echoing from every corner of the dark woods. Silas is using his dark magic to amplify the suffering of captured forest spirits, twisting their voices so they sound exactly like my dead family. The ghostly wails of my slaughtered pack beat against the log walls of my hut like a physical hammer, forcing the dark memories of my ancient trauma to flood my mind. My long, dark hair whips around my face as I pace across the room, my hands clutching my head because the voices are clawing at my sanity. "Kaelen, look at me! It is a trick!" Lyra cries out, her voice trembling as she chases me through the dim room, but I can barely hear her over the roaring in my ears. "They are dying because of me!" I groan, my breath catching as my silver eyes spin out of control, flashing with a wild, erratic light. "The blood, it is returning to the soil. I am going to lose control, Lyra. If the beast snaps, I will tear you apart just like I tore them apart centuries ago." "You are not that monster anymore," she yells, and before I can push her away, her small hands slap against my burning cheeks. In that moment, her touch acts like a lightning rod, grounding my spiraling mind and forcing the terrifying illusions to shatter into a million pieces. The heavy air thickens between us as I look down into her fierce eyes, my chest heaving against her small frame. She doesn't let go of my face. Rather, she presses her forehead against mine, her heartbeat anchoring my soul in the middle of the raging storm. Because of her touch, the violent shaking of the cabin stops instantly, proving that her presence is the only thing strong enough to calm the storm inside the Alpha King. Chapter 11. Come morning, a terrifying shift occurs that shatters our fragile peace into absolute dust. The screams of the spirits suddenly stop, replaced by a deep, rumbling sound that makes the floorboards of the cabin vibrate violently. I lunge toward the window, throwing the wooden shutter open to look out at the deep forest. My blood runs cold. A thick line of black, unnatural fire is eating its way through the ancient pines, sending plumes of foul, purple smoke into the gray sky. Silas has stopped attacking the wards directly. Instead, he is burning the outer edges of the primeval woods to smoke me out. "Kaelen!" Lyra gasps, rushing to my side as my body suddenly stiffens, my knees buckling under the weight of a massive, sympathetic pain. "Ah!" I roar, dropping heavily to my hands and knees on the floor as a sensation of white-hot iron burns across my chest and back. Because my life force is directly tethered to the symbiotic environment, every single tree that burns feels like a limb being hacked off my own body. "What is happening? How do I help you?" she asks, her hands frantic as she tries to support my massive, trembling shoulders. "The forest, it is dying," I choke out, my sweat dripping onto the wood as the bioluminescent flowers on the walls shrivel and turn into black ash. No matter how hard she tried to hold me up, the agony keeps pulling me down into the dark, forcing a brutal realization to surface through the blinding pain. Hiding in this cage is no longer an option, because my passive defense is going to kill us both. The pacifist exile who has been running from his past for centuries must die today, so the Alpha King can rise to defend his territory. Chapter 12. I force my trembling body up from the floor, my muscles bulging with a cold, desperate fury as I walk over to the heavy iron chest in the corner of the room. I throw the lid back, revealing my ancestral weapons, a massive, silver-bladed war axe and a long dagger that haven't seen the light of day for hundreds of years. I strap the leather harness across my broad chest, my silver eyes flaring with an unblinking, lethal light that cuts through the dim room. Lyra stands by the hearth, her body perfectly still under the weight of my intense stare, as she watches me prepare for a slaughter. "I am going out into the dark to hunt Silas," I rumble, my voice sounding like grinding boulders as I look at her one last time. "Before I leave, you must know the full truth of the scar over my eyebrow and the blood on my hands. Centuries ago, my usurper kin poisoned my mind with dark magic, causing my inner beast to go blind with rage. When I woke up, my entire family was dead by my own claws, and I fled to these woods so I could never hurt another living soul. You were a victim of their malice, Kaelen, not a monster," she says, her quiet resilience filling the space between us as she walks over and touches my silver axe. "I am a weapon of destruction, Lyra," I reply, my breath catching as I reveal my deepest, most vulnerable shame to a human woman. "If I fail to control my rage tonight, I may never return to this cabin as a man. Then I will be right here waiting to pull you back from the wild," she whispers, her thumb brushing against my scarred eyebrow with a love so pure, it shakes my soul. Without another word, I turn around, pull the heavy iron bolts from the door, and step out into the burning, mist-shrouded night to bring an end to Silas's reign. Chapter 13. Shadows danced between them, or rather between the burning trees, as I stalked through the black smoke of Silas's forward camp. I moved like a ghost made of mist and cold fury, my heavy silver-bladed war axe resting loosely in my large right hand. My primary goal was to cut off the head of the snake by executing Silas before his dark magic could consume another single inch of my sanctuary. I slipped behind a massive soot-stained tent, my silver eyes tracking the movements of 5 Bloodmoon warriors standing around a blazing campfire. They were laughing about the destruction of my woods, unaware that the true Alpha King was watching them from the darkness. I erupted from the thick smoke in a blur of lethal, calculated violence, completely embracing my power without letting the blind rage take over. I swung the massive war axe in a wide, punishing arc, the silver blade slicing through the air with a loud whoosh. The first 2 warriors dropped instantly into the dirt, their chests torn open before they could even draw their weapons. Soon after, the remaining 3 wolves tried to transform, their bones popping and shifting as their black fur burst through their clothes. I didn't give them the chance to finish. Instead, I lunged forward, planting the butt of my axe into one wolf's throat while my hunting dagger found the heart of the second. The last warrior backed away into the flames, his chest heaving, his yellow eyes wide with absolute terror as he recognized my ancient aura. I stepped into the light of the fire, my face covered in black gore, looking like a terrifying god of war. "Where is Silas?" I growled, my voice vibrating the ground beneath his feet. He isn't here," the warrior choked out, laughing blood into the dirt. "This camp was just a decoy to draw you out into the dark, coward king." Silas went after the human. Chapter 14. A sudden, terrifying realization dawned on me, freezing the hot blood in my veins. Without thinking, I used my primal resonance to touch the living root systems beneath my feet, extending my mind miles back toward my hand-built cabin. My soul gasped. A massive, suffocating surge of dark magic was violently slamming against the blood runes I had carved into my floorboards. Silas had tricked me completely because he knew my fated mate was my ultimate weakness. My attempt to end the war quickly had left Lyra completely unprotected in the middle of a slaughterhouse. "No," I roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror ripping from my chest as the space between my ribs burned with agony. I did not waste time running back through the thick brush because every single second meant her death. Instead, I forced my physical body to transform into pure primal energy, utilizing the ancient magic of the woods to teleport directly through the roots of the primeval trees. The process was completely agonizing, tearing my skin and muscles apart as my mass was pulled through the solid earth. Still, I pushed through the blinding pain, my mind locked onto the image of Lyra's beautiful face and her soft touch. Moments later, I burst from the dirt right outside my cabin just as a massive explosion shattered my protective wards into a million glowing pieces. The heavy oak doors were blown off their hinges, and 3 massive black wolves were rushing into the dark opening of my home. My body moved on instinct as I threw my arms out, unleashing a massive shockwave of kinetic, primal energy that instantly vaporized the attackers into black ash. The effort took everything I had, and I dropped heavily to my knees in the frozen mud, my breath a ragged gasp as my magical reserves completely emptied. Chapter 15. I crawled through the ruined doorway of my cabin, my silver eyes scanning the wreckage as my own hot blood dripped onto the splintered floorboards. The beautiful, blooming bioluminescent flowers were all dead, their petals turned to gray dust under the heavy boots of the invaders. My body was shivering violently from the teleportation spell, and my muscles felt like liquid lead, resisting every single effort to move. My new immediate goal was to find Lyra, to ensure her heart was still beating before the rest of Silas's army arrived to finish us off. "Lyra," I rasped, my voice trembling as I dragged my large, bleeding frame toward the center of the room. Before the words left my lips, a small hand reached out from behind the overturned oak table, grabbing my sleeve with a hyper-vigilant grip. She was covered in soot, her face pale, but her deep eyes were completely wide and alive with an unbreakable will to live. She had survived the blast by hiding beneath my heavy iron trunk, proving her fierce adaptability once again in the middle of a supernatural battlefield. "I'm here, Kaelen. I'm right here," she whispered, her hands shaking as she pulled my heavy, wounded shoulders up against her chest. "The sanctuary has fallen, Lyra." I groaned, my head dropping against her neck as the distant sound of hundreds of heavy paws began to thump against the earth outside. The claustrophobic mist was rolling into the room through the broken door, bringing the foul stench of the Bloodmoon pack with it. We were completely surrounded, trapped in the ruins of our cage, and as the sky darkened outside, I knew there was absolutely no turning back from the dark fate waiting for us in the trees. Chapter 16. The heavy stomps of 100 savage paws shook the splintered floorboards above our heads, sending cascades of gray ash down into the pitch-black darkness of the hidden storm cellar. I sat frozen in the damp dirt, my broad chest heaving in a ragged, shallow rhythm as I pressed my massive back against the cold stone foundation. My magical reserves were completely gone, leaving my silver eyes dim and flat in the suffocating gloom of our tiny hiding spot. My main goal right now was simply to buy Lyra a few more hours of life, hiding her behind my large frame, while the Bloodmoon pack tore our home apart directly above us. "They are ripping the cabin to pieces," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling as she huddled between my knees, her small hands clutching the rough fabric of my fur coat. "Let them destroy the wood," I rumbled, my low voice shaking with a deep, crushing defeat that felt heavier than the solid earth pressing down on us. "I was a fool to think I could protect you, Lyra. My presence in your life has done nothing but bring a supernatural slaughterhouse right to your doorstep." "Don't talk like that, Kaelen," she whispered back, her hyper-vigilant eyes trying to search my scarred face through the heavy shadows. "You saved me from the blast. We are still breathing, and as long as we are alive, we still have a chance to fight our way out of this hole." What followed was a horrific splintering crash from above as Silas's warriors ripped the heavy iron trunk off its hinges, their guttural snarls echoing through the floorboards. The foul, rotten stench of dark magic seeped down through the cracks in the wood, instantly suffocating the clean scent of wild rain and sweet honey that usually surrounded my fated mate. Deep down, I knew the bitter truth. My pathologically protective nature had failed completely, and my centuries of self-imposed exile had turned into a death trap for the only woman I had ever loved. Chapter 17. Without warning, the chaotic sounds of destruction above us suddenly stopped, plunging the ruined cabin into a terrifying heavy silence that made my pulse race in my throat. A moment later, a deep, magically amplified voice boomed through the cracks in the floorboards, vibrating the damp dirt walls of our cellar like a physical blow. It was Silas, his cruel laughter dripping with a smooth, arrogant confidence that made the beast inside my chest rattle its cage in silent fury. "I know you are hiding down in the dirt like a wounded dog, Kaelen." Silas sneered, his words hanging in the stagnant air above us. "Human girl, hear my words. If you use the silver dagger on his belt and throw his head up through the floorboards, I will grant you absolute safe passage back to your human town." I froze, the air thick in my lungs as I looked down at the fragile human woman resting against my bleeding ribs. In that moment, a wave of absolute self-loathing resignation washed over my soul, convincing me that my death was the only righteous act left to perform. I reached down with a trembling hand, unbuckling the ancestral silver dagger from my leather harness and forcing the cold hilt into her small palms. "Take it," I whispered, a heavy tear cutting through the dried black blood on my thick beard as I looked into her wide, shocked eyes. "He is telling the truth, Lyra. Silas only wants my crown and my life to legitimize his stolen reign. If you kill me now, the fated bond will break, and you can walk away from this primeval nightmare alive." "Are you insane?" she gasped, her knuckles turning completely white as she gripped the silver weapon, her chest aching with a sudden sharp agony. "I am a curse to you," I rasped, leaning my scarred brow against hers as the heavy silence roared around us. "My power slaughtered my first family, and now it has destroyed our sanctuary. Pull the blade across my throat, Lyra, and save yourself from the monster." Chapter 18. Instead of raising the silver blade to my neck, Lyra let out a fierce cry of pure defiance and threw the ancestral dagger hard against the stone wall, where it clattered uselessly into the damp dirt. She grabbed the collar of my torn fur coat with both hands, her small body moving on instinct as she threw her weight against my broad chest, forcing me to look directly into her eyes. "I don't care about your past, and I don't care about your curse," she fiercely whispered, her small fingers digging into my shoulders with an unbreakable, quiet resilience. I am not going back to that bleak human town, Kaelen. You are my protector, you are my fated mate, and I am claiming you right here in the dark. Between one breath and the next, she leaned up and pressed her soft lips against mine, breaking the thick wall of isolation I had spent centuries building around my heart. The moment our lips locked, a massive, concussive shockwave of golden fire bloomed beneath my skin, tearing through my empty veins with the force of an exploding sun. My soul answered her call with a ferocious, primitive roar, and I wept against her mouth, the stoic, brooding Alpha King completely broken and rebuilt by her love. I realized the ultimate truth in the middle of our lowest point. A martyr could never protect a fated mate, and I had to stop running from my nature if I wanted her to survive the night. Before either could speak, a massive clawed fist punched straight through the wooden cellar doors above us, showering our bodies with sharp splinters of oak. The black, twisted faces of 3 Bloodmoon scouts peered down into the gloom, their yellow teeth bared in triumphant grins as they prepared to drop into our hiding spot. The tension broke completely as the cellar doors began to splinter into matchwood, forcing me to stand up to face the final crucible of my long, dark life. Chapter 19. The ceiling of our hiding spot exploded into a storm of flying splinters and heavy dust as the cellar doors were completely ripped away. The 3 Bloodmoon scouts dropped into the damp dirt like heavy stones, their snarling jaws snapping at the dark air. They expected to find a beaten, dying exile cowering in the mud. Instead, they found a king reborn. I erupted from the shadows, my muscles bulging with a blinding golden alpha energy that burned away the cold fatigue in my limbs. I didn't even reach for my silver axe. Moving with absolute supernatural speed, I caught the first 2 wolves by their thick necks mid-air, slamming their heavy skulls together with a bone-crushing crack that echoed off the stone foundation. They dropped instantly, their black fur dissolving into gray ash before they could even let out a final whimper. The 3rd predator tried to leap backward out of the hole, its yellow eyes wide with sudden, catastrophic terror as it felt the immense weight of my revived aura. Going somewhere? I growled, my voice vibrating the very foundations of the earth. I lunged upward, my large hand clamping around the beast's hind leg like an iron vice. With a single fluid motion, I slammed the massive wolf down into the dirt floor, ending its life before it could draw another breath. The air inside the cellar was thick, hot, and electric, completely supercharged by the raw power of the completed mate bond. I turned back to Lyra, my silver eyes burning with a brilliant, steady fire that finally held no fear, no self-loathing, and no hesitation. "Stay close to my back," I rumble, extending a hand to pull her up from the dirt. "We are ending this tonight." Chapter 20. I vaulted out of the ruined cellar hole and stepped onto the splintered floorboards of my destroyed cabin, pulling Lyra up right behind me. The cold night air rushed into the room through the shattered walls, but the freezing wind couldn't touch the white-hot heat radiating from my skin. Outside, the entire Bloodmoon vanguard, nearly 100 massive, dark-furred wolves, stood frozen in the burning mist, their savage growls dying in their throats as they looked upon the ruined doorway. Silas stood at the center of the army in his human form, a cruel, elegant man wrapped in fine furs, his confidence instantly evaporating the moment his eyes locked onto mine. "Impossible," Silas hissed, his voice cracking as he took a subconscious step backward into his ranks. "You were drained. You were supposed to be dead." "You came to my forest to hunt a coward, Silas," I replied, my deep voice rolling across the battlefield like a clap of thunder, making the surrounding wolves whimpering and lower their heads. "But you woke a king." The moral contradiction that had paralyzed my soul for centuries was completely gone, replaced by a singular, unyielding purpose. I wasn't fighting out of blind, chaotic rage. I was fighting to protect the woman standing directly behind me, the rightful queen of this domain. I unstrapped my massive silver-bladed war axe from my back, the weapon humming with a sharp kinetic energy that vibrated the frozen ground. Lyra didn't shrink away from the terrifying display of my power. Instead, she pressed her hand against my lower back, her steady breathing anchoring my soul to the earth and giving me total, absolute control over the beast inside. Chapter 21. "Kill them! Kill them both!" Silas screamed, his voice turning high-pitched with panic as he waved his hand toward the cabin. The front line of the Bloodmoon pack erupted forward, a tidal wave of black fur, sharp claws, and rotten dark magic surging across the frosted earth. I didn't wait for them to reach the threshold. I leaped from the ruined porch of my cabin, my silver axe swinging in a massive, devastating arc that unleashed a crescent wave of golden, kinetic energy across the battlefield. The front rank of wolves was thrown backward into the trees, their dark magic shattering like glass against the pure power of my ancestral aura. I moved through the sea of enemies like a storm, every swing of my heavy blade a calculated lethal strike that cleared the path ahead. Wolves lunged at my flanks, their teeth grazing my heavy leather armor, but they couldn't break my focus. Every time a shadow moved too close, Lyra's hyper-vigilant voice cut through the chaos, warning me of the hidden threats from behind. We moved as a single perfect unit, the warrior and his anchor, turning the supernatural slaughterhouse into a display of absolute justice. Within minutes, the perimeter of the burning sanctuary was quiet again, the remaining Bloodmoon scouts fleeing back into the deep fog to escape my wrath. Only Silas remained, his back pressed against a burning pine tree, his claws extending as he prepared for a final desperate struggle. I walked toward him slowly, my heavy boots thumping against the earth, my silver axe resting on my shoulder as the golden light of the forest began to bloom once more in the wake of our victory. Chapter 22. Silas stood frozen against the trunk of the blistering pine, the orange glow of the dying fire reflecting in his frantic yellow eyes. The elegant posture he had held all night was completely shattered, replaced by the desperate posture of a cornered thief. He looked at the vast graveyard of his vanguard, then at the bright golden light pulsing through my veins, and finally at Lyra, who stood firmly at the top of the cabin ridge, with the silver dagger glinting in her hand. "You think you've won, Kaelen?" Silas spat, blood dripping from his lip as he bared his teeth in a hideous grin. "You can kill me, but you can't kill the rot I brought with me. The heartwood is poisoned. The dark magic has already reached the core. Then I will squeeze the poison out myself," I growled, taking a massive step forward, my heavy leather boots crushing the charred embers beneath my feet. I didn't give him another second to speak. Silas let out a desperate high-pitched howl and transformed mid-air, shifting into a massive, jagged, furred black beast that lunged directly for my throat. But I was no longer the broken man he had psychological power over. I dropped my silver axe into the snow and met him head-on, my large hands clamping around his massive jaws before his teeth could pierce my skin. A sharp gasp echoed from the ridge as Lyra watched the two giant forces collide, shaking the very earth beneath our feet. Silas thrashed violently, his razor-sharp claws tearing through my heavy furs and slicing deep lines into my chest. But the pain didn't trigger a blind, chaotic rage. Instead, it felt clean, fueled by the steady pulse of the completed mate bond. I leaned into his weight, my silver eyes flaring with a brilliant, blinding light, and with a final, crushing surge of primal power, I snapped his neck, throwing his lifeless body into the dirt. Chapter 23. The moment Silas's heart stopped beating, a heavy, suffocating silence fell over the primeval woods. The foul, sulphurous stench of his dark magic began to lift from the soil, drifting away into the gray morning air like a bad dream. I stood over the body of the usurper, my chest heaving as hot, red blood dripped from my fresh wounds onto the frozen earth. Yet, the beast inside my chest didn't roar in triumph. It simply sighed, completely at peace, curling up beneath my ribs like a protective guardian rather than a rabid monster. "Kaelen!" Lyra's voice broke through the stillness, her soft footsteps sprinting down the rocky slope toward me. She didn't hesitate for a single second, throwing her small arms around my massive, blood-soaked waist and burying her face against my battered chest. I wrapped my large, trembling arms around her fragile frame, holding her so tightly that the space between us completely disappeared. The touch of my fated mate sent a wave of soothing, cool energy through my burning muscles, instantly knitting the jagged tears on my chest back together. "It's over, Lyra," I rumbled, my deep voice thick with an emotion I hadn't felt in centuries: hope. "The pack is gone. The line of the usurper is broken." "We did it," she whispered, pulling back just enough to look up into my face, her hyper-vigilant eyes finally softening as she reached up to brush a streak of black soot from my cheek. "You didn't lose control, Kaelen. You protected me, and you protected your home, completely as a man." Chapter 24. Come morning, the first real rays of warm golden sunshine cut through the clearing of the Heartwood Sanctuary, breaking a century of permanent gray fog. I stood with Lyra on the ruined porch of our hand-built cabin, my arm wrapped securely around her waist as we looked out at the changing landscape. Small green sprouts were already aggressively bursting through the charred earth, and new, vibrant, bioluminescent flowers were blooming across the ancient trunks, their soft petals humming with a fresh, uncorrupted magic. The physical scars on the land would take time to heal, just like the emotional scars on my own soul. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone in the dark. "What do we do now?" Lyra asked softly, leaning her head against my broad shoulder, her scent of wild rain and sweet honey perfectly blending with the fresh pine air. "We rebuild," I replied, my silver eyes looking out toward the horizon where the rest of the scattered broken packs were waiting for a righteous leader to guide them out of the dark. "But we do it together. I am no longer the exiled Alpha King hiding in a psychological prison. I am a protector, and this is our kingdom." She turned in my embrace, her thumb gently tracing the thick scar over my left eyebrow one last time, her touch a permanent reminder of the love that had saved me from the wild. The moral contradiction of my life had finally been resolved in the most beautiful way possible. Connection wasn't a casualty. It was the ultimate source of my true strength. As the sun rose high into the clear blue sky, the primeval forest sang a new song of life, sealing our fated bond for the rest of eternity. The end.